nearly kills Aquaman in a weird competition in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen number 115. When Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen is eaten by the same whale that ate Jonah in the Bible, he develops the same superpowers as Aquaman. Jimmy uses these newfound powers to save the day when a bunch of sunken ships surface and almost crash into an aircraft carrier. Superman and Aquaman show up, and Supes asks Aquaman why he didn't handle the incident and implies that he's been slipping ever since his wife Mera disappeared. An incensed Aquaman tells Superman that he is far more powerful than Jimmy and can prove it in any test the Man of Steel comes up with. Superman takes both of them to a desert and explains that since their powers only allow them to be out of the water for an hour, and it has been 55 minutes since they were in the sea, they will soon begin to die. Whoever lasts the longest will be King of Atlantis. He leaves them to struggle and returns to taunt them with a pitcher of seawater. When Aquaman loses, Jimmy has him taken back to Atlantis. Once he's gone, Superman reveals that he is actually Proteus, the old man of the sea in disguise. So technically, this wasn't Superman, but Aquaman doesn't learn this until much later in the comics, so for a chunk of time, he thinks that Superman did all that to him. It's not actually Superman, so I put it in the number 10 slot, but honestly, this behavior wouldn't be that unusual for the Silver Age Man of Steel. Number 9 makes a smut film with Mr. Miracle's wife in Action Comics number 593. In a really bizarre story by John Byrne, Mr. Miracle comes home to Darkseid sitting in his living room. Darkseid informs him that his wife, Big Barda, has been captured and hands him a VHS tape. Mr. Miracle awkwardly crawls around on the floor to put the tape in his VCR and discovers that his wife has been hypnotized and is starring in adult films. He takes off to find his wife. The villain, Sleaze, shows up at the studio to talk to the director and reveals that he also has Superman under his control and suggests that the director use Superman and Big Barda in a film together. Mr. Miracle arrives just in time to see his wife and Superman making out in a shabby bedroom set, and he interrupts the filming. The three heroes defeat the villains, but all three of the heroes are pretty embarrassed by the situation, and Superman claims that he doesn't remember what happened while under Sleaze's control, but I think he might just be lying to get out of an awkward situation. Anyways, that's the last of these entries on the list where it isn't actually Superman or he isn't in control of his actions, so let's get into the meat of the list. Number 8, his first fight with Batman in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 2. In the story of how the Justice League came together in 2011's New 52 reboot, the heroes are all loners who don't trust each other. When Batman and Green Lantern come across a parademon and a mother box, they are unable to identify it, but realize it is of alien origin. They decide that their best bet is to go to Metropolis and talk to the only other alien they know about, Superman. Due to a misunderstanding, Superman believes that the other two heroes are somehow involved with the parademons and attacks them. Batman tries to hold his own by throwing tear gas, sonic grenades, and tasers at the Man of Steel with no effect. Superman chides the Caped Crusader, telling him, "Your belt's empty, Batman," before grabbing him by the throat and slamming him into a wall. Considering how well Batman managed to do against Superman in subsequent fights, he clearly felt this loss, and I'd argue has never felt so powerless.
Number 7, Maxima. Based off of a similar interaction from the comics, Maxima of the Royal House of the planet Almerac offered herself to Superman in the Superman animated series. She told him that they were a perfect genetic match, and promised that if he was able to best her in combat, she would wed him. He told her that he wasn't interested, which caused her to start a fight with him. He did end up defeating her, but this only strengthened her attraction to him more. Delighted she had finally found someone who she deemed her equal. He beat her, but then she kidnapped him, because that's what you do, I guess, when you're in love with someone and they beat you in combat.
Number 6 exiles Supergirl to another planet in Action Comics number 258. When Superman's cousin, Kara Zor-El, came to Earth and revealed that he wasn't the only surviving member of his family, Superman described it as the happiest moment of his life. He then dropped her off at the orphanage and told her that she had to keep her existence a secret. She took all of this in stride and followed Superman's orders until one day she saw Krypto the Superdog flying around. She introduced herself to Krypto and the two had a fun time playing together. Then Then Superman showed up and started scolding her for revealing her existence. Supergirl very reasonably points out that Krypto is a dog and can't talk, let alone reveal her to the world. Superman responds by banishing her to live on an asteroid for a year in complete isolation. Supergirl stays there for a week before Krypto shows up with a note from Superman telling her that there is a storm of kryptonite dust coming to the asteroid and that she must return to the orphanage in her secret identity of Linda Lee for one day before going back to space for the rest of her exile. Linda shows up at the orphanage but finds herself in a spot of trouble when she comes across a search party that has been looking for the missing orphan. She covers herself in mud and claims to have been stranded in Dismal Swamp for the past week. She dodges reporters' questions, and Superman reveals that all the shaming and sending her off into exile was an elaborate test to see if she was clever enough to figure out how to maintain a secret identity. Superman congratulates Supergirl for passing the test, and she excitedly asks if this means that she no longer has to keep her existence a secret, and Superman clarifies that he never said that, and tells her to continue living in secret until he damn well says so. Number 5. Time travel. In the 1978 Superman film, the Man of Steel spun the world backwards in order to turn back time and reverse the death of Lois Lane. This is the most infamous example of this, but you may be surprised to learn that this was not a power made up for the movies, and actually has precedent in the comics. Now, it's not that surprising that this ability would be useful, but what is surprising is what Clark chooses to use it for. In Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane, number 20, Superman, having grown tired of Lois constantly snooping around, trying to prove that Clark Kent is the Man of Steel, decides to travel back in time to before he started working at the Daily Planet. Once back in time, he decides to instead get a job as a radio DJ, playing top 40 hits for the people of Metropolis, eventually striking up a relationship with his secretary, Liza Landis. In an ironic twist of fate, this time travel ends up making his life more difficult, as Lois still ends up meeting and becoming obsessed with Superman. Dealing with this and Liza Landis, who is also trying to prove that Clark Kent is Superman, makes Superman choose to return to his original future timeline because dealing with one double L initialed woman is easier than two. Superman is unsure if he made the right decision until Liza comes into the Daily Planet for an interview and Clark discovers that she has gained weight, leading him to think to himself, "Great Scott, that was Liza Landis, grown enormously fat through the years. Thank goodness I never married her. Whew." Yeah, real classy, Clark. Number 4. One-upping Batman's gifts in World's Finest number 85. When the ruler of Balkania, Princess Verena, comes to America, her only desire is to see the famous heroes Superman and Batman. And if Robin is also there, that's fine. When the two heroes meet the princess, both are immediately smitten and begin competing for the beautiful princess's affection. When Batman goes out and gets her a bouquet of orchids, Superman flies to South America and gets a giant orchid for the princess. Batman gives her a large diamond ring that he bought, and Superman responds by getting a giant piece of coal and crushing it into a giant, supersized diamond and offering it to the princess. Batman takes Verena on a tour of the city in the Batmobile, letting a very unimpressed Robin drive while he puts the Bat moves on the princess. The mood is ruined when they look at a nearby cliff that Superman has defaced by carving a giant heart with the words "S loves V." Batman goes to the train station with the princess so she can move on from Metropolis to Gotham, but before he can get on the train, Superman picks up the train and flies it to Gotham, leaving Batman to frantically chase after them in the Batplane. When they discover that the princess is actually in love with her bodyguard, Captain Stefan, the heroes claim that they were just pretending to be rivals in order to better protect her, but come on. Even if that is the case, that doesn't mean Superman had to go so all out on making Batman look like a fool in front of the princess and the entire world.
Number 3. Dr. Fate. This battle was a surprisingly quick one. You would think that it wouldn't even be a fair fight for the Man of Steel due to his weakness to magic, a weakness that really only exists to prevent him from being so overpowered. Remember the original Superman, like before the 80s? No weaknesses, and he just seemed to have a limitless amount of convenient superpowers? Oh, those were the ultimate days for our caped vigilante. No longer, unfortunately. Superman was retconned and given limits and weaknesses to make him a more interesting character. After all, everyone enjoys reading about his struggle. We want to see Superman, try and fail sometimes. This battle between Dr. Fate and Earth 2 Superman, the Kal-El clone known as Brutal, was not that though. Not a struggle. Not at all. Superman snuck up on the magical hero and smashed his helmet, which is kind of Dr. Fate's power source. Therefore, in doing so, he instantly defeated him. Well, that was easy.
That was easy.
Number 2 frames Batman for witchcraft in World's Finest number 186 and 187. When Batman and Superman go back in time to colonial times, they come across a woman who had been accused of witchcraft and is about to be dunked in the town pond. Superman moves too fast to be seen and goes into the water and uses his steel-like teeth to gnaw through the dunking mechanism. Batman then dives into the water and rescues the woman. She is smitten with Batman and gives him a kiss. Superman thinks to himself, "Isn't that just like a woman? I did the work and Batman's collecting the goodies." In retaliation, the Man of Steel disguises himself as Batman and starts flying around the town on a broomstick. He then uses his super speed to make it look like Batman has turned coal to diamonds and uses his super ventriloquism to make it look like a black cat is accusing Batman of being an agent of Satan. As an impartial out-of-towner, Superman is chosen to prosecute a very confused Batman. He has Batman put in the stocks and sentences him to be burnt at the stake. When Batman is tied to the stake, Superman uses his heat vision to start the fire, claiming that it is further proof of Batman's demonic powers. Batman is eventually able to make the townsfolk think that Superman is the witch and is set free. Superman tells Batman that he saw that he had been possessed by a demon and was putting Batman in danger to scare the demon out of his body. But as the reader, we can read Superman's thought bubbles during the frame job, and he really does think about how jealous he is that the woman has chosen Batman over him, and is laughing and giggling to himself as Batman begs him to stop the townsfolk from carrying him away in chains. So even if he had a good reason to put Batman in danger, he's getting way too much joy out of it. Number 1 forces Jimmy Olsen to marry a gorilla in Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen number 98. For anyone claiming Jimmy Olsen doesn't count as a hero, I would remind you that Jimmy has saved Superman's life several times and has developed superpowers even more times, so I'm counting him. In Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen number 98, Jimmy and Clark are on assignment in the African jungle where a blockbuster movie is being filmed. The film crew is using the local natives as extras and in exchange are showing the natives a different jungle movie every night. The natives worship a sacred ape named Bruna, who comes into the camp and is enamored with the showing of King Kong. When Jimmy dresses up in a Tarzan costume and begins swinging from vines in an attempt to convince the director to give him a role in the movie, he gets trapped by an underwater pool of quicksand. He is rescued by Bruna, the sacred ape, who is immediately smitten with the young cub reporter. The ape tries to woo Jimmy, even bringing him a bouquet of bananas, but Jimmy runs away. The sacred ape goes on a rampage after losing her chosen mate, and Superman decides that the best thing for everyone would be if Jimmy just goes along with it until he can figure out a plan. He drops Jimmy off with the ape and brings them a fruit basket as an engagement gift. Jimmy's girlfriend, Lucy Lane, shows up and makes the ape a bridal veil. Just when things can't seem to get any worse for Jimmy, Superman shows up dressed as a witch doctor to perform the ceremony while the movie crew films the whole thing. Bruna eventually tires of Jimmy and throws him off a cliff, and he is rescued by the Man of Steel, but I think we can all agree that Superman let this one go on a little too far before he intervened. Number 10. Super mathematics. I'm not entirely sure how super mathematics works or what makes it different than regular math, but the ability to do complex equations on the fly could be useful for someone like Superman, and could explain how he's able to adjust his speed to match the velocity of a falling person, and catch them without seriously injuring them. This power is best remembered for a panel that shows Superman holding a jar of beans and guessing how many beans are in the jar by weighing them and calculating the number based on weight. Although in this panel he actually gets the math wrong by saying that 20 times 16 times 10 is 32,000. It's actually 3,200. I figured that out using regular math. Super mathematics made a more recent appearance in Superman Earth 1 Issue 1, when Clark Kent visits a research lab and immediately solves a complex equation that has been baffling the scientists. Number 9. Super weaving. Appearing in Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane number 15, this power was not actually performed by Superman, but by a distant but identical relative of his who escaped from the bottle city of Kandor. Van Zee wanted to marry Lois Lane, but decided to settle for her doppelganger, an heiress named Sylvia. In order to prove his love for her, Van Zee got her several elaborate gifts, including the wedding dress of Helen of Troy. Seeing that it was damaged, Van Zee unraveled the threads and used his super weaving to weave a new, more modern wedding dress. Now, Since Superman is also Kryptonian, we can assume that he also has this ability. This could explain how Superman repairs his costume when it becomes damaged, something that comes up more often than you'd think. Of course, one could argue that super weaving is just regular weaving at super speed. Number 8. Shooting a mini Superman out of your hand. When Superman temporarily lost most of his powers while investigating a crashed alien ship in Superman number 125, he gained the strange ability to shoot a miniature version of himself out of his hand. This proxy had all of Superman's classic powers, allowing him to pick up Superman's slack while he remained depowered. This is obviously silly, but undeniably useful. Instead of facing danger head-on, Superman could send this miniature version of himself to do the work for him. It's an efficient delegation. Heck, that would be useful for anyone. Imagine being able to send a mini-me out to pick up your dry cleaning. Proxy Superman only lasted for one story before dying from kryptonite exposure, thus returning Superman to his full power. Number 7. His fight with Green Lantern in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 2. Continuing on from the previous entry, let's talk about how the same fight went for Green Lantern. He spent most of the flight to Metropolis bragging to Batman that he would have no problem beating the Man of Steel. When they found Superman, Hal told Batman to stay back while he handled Superman. Superman then came at him faster than a speeding bullet and more powerfully than a locomotive. While Batman was being mildly irritating at best to Superman, Green Lantern came in for round 2, tying Superman up with constructs of giant chains. Superman smirked and said, "Chains? Really? You're funny, Green Lantern," before easily shattering the construct and renewing his attack. Pretty much all of Hal's confidence shattered at this point, and he protected Batman and himself in a bubble as Superman bounced them around the city. Superman was being pretty intense about the whole situation, but thankfully a timely intervention by the Flash allowed them to recover and explain themselves to the Man of Steel. Number 6. Super reading. This is an ability that Superman still uses from time to time, but it isn't talked about very often. Superman has the ability to read at super speed and retain all of the information. Now, for the average person, this would be great when cramming for an exam, but the Man of Steel often uses it for more practical purposes. For example, in Superman Red Son, the Russian Superman uses his super reading in order to learn new languages in a matter of moments so that he can negotiate with his enemies in their native languages. In a more extreme example found in Action Comics Volume 2, Number 12, when Lois Lane is gravely injured and Superman uses his super reading to read every medical textbook ever written in order to quickly learn how to perform life-saving surgery on Lois. This power is essentially a way to learn any skill you need in a matter of moments, so it's surprising that Superman isn't shown using it more often. But I suppose there aren't many practical skills you need when you can crush coal into diamond with your bare hands.
Number 5. Wonder Woman. This one is only ranked so low because it is so brutal and it hurts my heart whenever I think about it. This fight happened in an alternate timeline where Superman and Batman become tyrannical leaders. Wonder Woman was one of the few heroes left who was attempting to save the world from their fascist supremacy. She managed to take out Bruce, but unfortunately was no match for the enraged Superman that she ended up crossing paths with, who was obviously pissed that she had taken out his BFF, Batman. Clark didn't just beat Wonder Woman though, no. He destroyed her. He demolished her shield, blasted through her bracelets, and ended up strangling her with her own lasso of truth. Oh, devastating.
Number 4. Hypnosis. One of the first questions people ask about Superman when they think they're being smart and original is, oh, how does no one realize that Superman is Clark Kent when all he does is disguise himself with a pair of glasses? When asked this, I usually respond that actually he's not just wearing glasses, he's completely changing his personality and body language. And secondly, barely anyone assumes that Superman has a secret identity. They think he's just always Superman. If that doesn't end the conversation, I usually sigh and bring up the Silver Age explanation. You see, back in the day, Superman had the ability to hypnotize people with his mind, and his glasses, whose lenses were made from the window of the starship he came to Earth in, amplified this ability, hypnotizing everyone into seeing Clark as a different person than Superman. Of course, this doesn't explain why pictures of him don't give him away. Beyond protecting protecting his identity, Superman was also able to use his hypnosis abilities offensively, such as in Action Comics number 555, when the Parasite stole his powers and Superman used his hypnotic lenses to make the villain give them back. Number 3. Making Robin his court jester in World's Finest number 165. When the evil King Wolf escapes from prison, he claims to his men that he is dying. He devises a competition for his henchmen to determine who the new king of crime will be. They must complete 3 robberies, and whoever pulls off the robbery best will be the new king. Batman and Superman suspect that the king is lying about his condition and decide to help the criminals with their robberies in hopes that the king will reveal his true plan. Batman and Robin take out one of the henchmen, and Batman disguises himself as the goon in order to infiltrate the gang. One of the other criminals disguises himself as Superman in order to pretend to stop a robbery and take the loot as evidence. In order to make sure he wins the competition, Batman knows he has to pull off a spectacular crime, and Wellen disguises the goon, disguises himself as Batman, and holds himself hostage, threatening to have himself killed if the submarine he's robbing doesn't hand over the ship's supercomputer. Robin pretends to not know what's going on, and Batman pretends to capture him and takes him back to the king's hideout. Okay, if you're confused, don't worry, it gets worse. Batman ties with the criminal who is disguised as Superman, who unbeknownst to Batman actually is Superman, and both are crowned the new kings of crime. When asked what his first royal decree is, Superman immediately says he wants to see Robin killed. Like, honestly, it comes to mind a little too fast. Batman is able to claim that since he captured Robin, he should get to decide his fate, and suggests that they make him the new court jester. Superman agrees, and Robin is forced to dress as a jester and perform for the court of criminals, while Batman and Superman tool around. Now, Dick Grayson was a circus performer before becoming a hero, but it's still weird that Superman and Batman made him dress up and give them a full show before making any effort to figure out the criminal's plan. Number 2. Shapeshifting. If you still think Clark Kent using glasses to preserve his secret identity is dumb, you're gonna lose it when you find out that he used to have the ability to shapeshift and could have just been doing that instead. Instead of using it to preserve his secret identity, Superman would use this power to impersonate other people, such as in Action Comics number 55, when Superman comes across 2 men about to wrestle to determine which of them will get to marry a woman named Maisie Day. When Superman finds out that one of the men has been drugged in an attempt to fix the fight, he knocks out the fighter, steals his clothes, changes his face, and wins the fight on his behalf. In an even more extreme example of this power, Superman once used this ability to impersonate an alien, showing that he is not limited to imitating humanoid features. While this is obviously useful, I feel like I have to mention again that it would be even more useful if he used it to create a better disguise for himself than the glasses. Number 1. Mind control and telepathy. In the same issue where Superman impersonated an alien from another dimension, he also displayed the ability to use telepathic will control to convince an alien to remove their interdimensional travel machine. This begs the question as to why Superman doesn't just say, use this power to make Lex Luthor decide not to be a criminal. Although there haven't been other instances of Superman using full-on mind control, his other telepathic powers have shown up here and there in older Superman comics. But their most surprising use, in my opinion, is to essentially function as caller ID, as demonstrated when Superman stared at a ringing phone and was immediately able to tell that it was Perry White calling. This isn't a problem now, but in a time before caller ID, the ability to screen your calls would be surprisingly useful for anyone, let alone the Man of Steel.
Number 10. Goku. This fight was non-canon but has been the focus of more than one death battle video. Unfortunately, the odds of this happening in the pages of a comic or a manga seem slim, but hey, you never know. The only reason I'm actually ranking this one so low though is because of its non-canon status. Because who wouldn't want to watch a fight and see Superman triumph over Goku at the very end? We all assumed these two would have a great fight as they seem so evenly matched, both being from very strong alien races and almost the last of their kind. Goku got bested both times due to his desire to keep it a fair fight. In one of the death battle videos, Goku actually could have won if he had decided to use kryptonite, but he kind of felt like it was cheating, so wah wah, you lose. Goku just wants to win on brute strength alone. It's all about the power levels.
Oh boy! This is gonna be fun.
You're insane!
Number 9. The Elite. This entire team of anti-heroes got Superman's attention after they started dispatching villains in a brutal and violent way, even killing them. Superman, being very anti-violence, disagreed with their methods and told them to stop it. But their leader, Manchester Black, a powerful telekinetic, refused, laughing in Superman's face. Much to Kal-El's dismay, the team also seemed to be gaining popularity among civilians. The team and Superman eventually came to blows, and just as they thought they had won and defeated him and potentially killed him, Superman reappeared and seemed to hang up his morals momentarily in order to kill them all. The whole battle had been filmed and broadcast, so Manchester Black at least was able to declare that this proved that Superman was no better than they were. He was actually the only one left alive at the end, although Superman did apparently zap his powers away from him. But Superman once again managed to turn the tables on the Elite, revealing that he hadn't actually killed anyone, he just knocked out Manchester Black's teammates, and that his zapping of Manchester Black's powers was actually temporary and he would eventually recover. So yeah. Number 8. Flash. On the alternate Earth 2, Darkseid managed to create a clone of Kal-El, which appeared to possess almost all of the original Kal-El's memories actually. This version of Superman was known as Brutal, and while Superman often struggles to win against the Flash in the main continuity, this version of Superman both outran the Flash and managed to catch him. Even worse, he aimed to stop Jason Garrick, Earth 2's current Flash, from running away from him by crippling one of his legs. Ouch.
Number 7. Super ventriloquism. Another power that hasn't been seen post-Crisis. Superman used to have the ability to throw his voice and talk without moving his lips. While this is impressive, what makes this power really super is that it comes with the ability to perfectly imitate anyone's voice. This ability was used pretty consistently over the years to trick criminals into acting against their own self-interest, such as in the power's first appearance in Superman number 13, when Clark and Lois were being held hostage by armed gunmen. Superman used his ventriloquism to throw his voice so that Lois and the thugs would look behind them, giving him enough time to change into his supersuit, run out the door, fly around the block, come in through the window, punch out the goons, and change back into Clark Kent before Lois could turn back around. Personally, I think that if he has the speed to do all that, he could have eliminated a couple of steps from that plan, but what do I know? Superman used this ability several more times to battle evil and to gaslight Lois Lane into thinking that Krypto the Super Pup could talk. This power would be useful in a modern context, as the ability to mimic any voice could be used to open, say, voice control locks. But being Superman, he could always just rip open any door.
Number 6. Batman. Usually Batman is the one that beats Superman. Despite not having superpowers himself, he is pretty much always prepared going into battle with Superman, or with anyone for that matter. It's his superior planning skills and ability to be prepared for any outcome that always gives Batman the upper hand usually, and the edge in a battle. But what happens when Batman is without this skill? In the Justice League origin storyline from the New 52, we get to see what happens when Batman and Superman fight for the first time. Without Batman's extensive knowledge of Superman, he is left insanely vulnerable to the superpowered Kal-El. Green Lantern even attempts to help Batman out when all of Batman's gadgets that he would normally use to dominate in a fight seem to come up short. But even Green Lantern and Batman together proved no match for the Man of Steel.
Super tickles! No. Gucci, 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 Gucci.
Number 5 replaces Krypto with a different super dog in Superboy number 109. Due to his many years in comics and his recent appearance in DC League of Super Pets, you are likely passingly familiar with Krypto the Super Dog. But are you familiar with his rival, Swifty the Greyhound? Our story begins when Superboy is fiddling with his Phantom Zone projector while the imprisoned Kryptonian criminals led by General Zod are trying to affect the Boy of Steel by using mental suggestion to convince him to destroy himself. Because of his powers, Superboy isn't affected, so the Phantoms try again with Krypto to no avail. They instead brainwash a dog named Swifty and control him into making a potion that gives him superpowers. When Swifty shows up with powers, Superboy decides to put the two dogs through a series of tests to determine who is the better super pet and will get to go with him on an important space mission. The Phantom Kryptonians help Swifty so that he wins the competition. At this point, Superboy takes away Krypto's cape and gives it to the rival dog. To add insult to injury, he makes Krypto put on a damaged, moth-eaten cape and then ditches his dog to go to space with Swifty. Even Krypto thinks this is a bit much, as on the teaser page for the story, we see him thinking to himself between sobs, "Bad enough my master prefers that Supermutt to me, but did Superboy have to give Swifty my snazzy, indestructible cape and make me wear this crummy, moth-eaten spare cape of his?" Swifty eventually betrays the Boy of Steel, who is saved by a timely intervention by Krypto, but that doesn't make his treatment of his dog any less weird and kinda petty.
Number 4. The Hulk. Any battle with the Hulk proves interesting, as not many can take on the Green Giant and come out victorious. While the Hulk is Marvel and Superman is DC, we all bow down to the Hulk's strength, no matter what side of the fence we're on here. In other words, if a hero can beat the Hulk, it means something, namely that they are one of the strongest heroes in existence, because Hulk is on another level when it comes to his strength. During this crossover, Bruce Banner ended up being agitated by Lex Luthor and transforming into the Hulk in Metropolis. With innocence in danger, Superman swooped in and was forced to fight the Hulk out of the area. Superman fought him all the way to his Fortress of Solitude, but found himself unable to calm the Hulk down, and was forced to beat the Hulk by punching him so hard that he was knocked into the Phantom Zone. Now that is some strength.
Number 3. Tactile telekinesis. Now, this power isn't what you might think. Superman isn't able to move things with his mind, other than in the movie Superman 4, when he used telekinetic vision to rebuild the Great Wall of China, but I am not talking about that. I'm talking about Superman's ability to telekinetically control any object he touches. Admittedly, that sounds pretty useless and confusing, but it is actually one of Superman's most important powers. Many people assume that when Superman lifts a large object, like say an airplane, the reason he doesn't punch through the plane is just because comics are silly and not particularly interested in explaining the science of how stuff works. That's where they're wrong, because comics are extremely silly and usually over-explain how stuff works. When Superman grabs a falling plane, he uses his tactile telekinesis to form a force field around the plane so that it is able to retain its structural integrity.
Number 2. Thor. In the JLA/Avengers series from 2003, we saw the two famous superheroes from competing comic book powerhouse publishers come to blows as they raced one another to prevent the opposing team from seizing the 12 items of power. In the series, we saw a battle that put Thor up against Superman in the Savage Lands in a one-on-one fight over the Cosmic Cube. These two strong characters had always been a heated topic of debate for fans who mulled at who would be the victor should the two come to blows in a crossover. The answer? Superman proved to be the stronger after stopping an attack from Thor and then just KOing him in a battle, ending the famed debate once and for all. Just kidding, I'm sure everyone's still debating. Y'all can have a debate in the comments who you think would win again in a fight. Number 1. Shazam. In the Injustice Gods Among Us video game, we saw these two similar heroes come to blows. While many might think that Shazam having magic at his disposal would allow him to make quick work of Superman, being that Superman's weakness is magic, turns out they'd be wrong. In Injustice, we see a darker side of Superman, one who is no longer holding back his power. He freezes Shazam's mouth shut and melts his brain with his heat vision after Shazam disagrees with the Man of Steel. Yikes. Remind me to never get in an argument with Injustice Superman.